The Federal Reserve announced that it's cutting interest rates a quarter point this afternoon, the first rate cut since the 2008 financial crisis. David Gurr is at the New York Stock Exchange. Hey there, David. You know, the economy's doing relatively well. Unemployment's low. Corporate earnings have been decent. Why on earth are we getting a rate cut right now?
Alison, I'm so glad that you highlight all of that because the Fed chair did as well during his press conference. He acknowledged the fact that the U.S. economy is doing pretty well generally. He really hit on the fact that the labor market is doing especially well. Unemployment is low. It's a positive sign. This is being characterized as an insurance cut. And what the Fed chair said, again, after this statement was delivered today is, looking globally, there are areas of concern, things that could affect the U.S. economy. So his rationale, the Fed's rationale today for doing this, Alison, is there might be risks on the horizon outside of the U.S., and the Fed's got to get ahead of that.
David, we all know the president's been pressuring the Fed, criticizing Fed Chair Jay Powell for his hikes last year. Are people viewing this as caving to the pressure, or would we have needed a bigger rate cut for that?
You know, I'm going to say no, and I'm going to say that unequivocally, because basically I had him asked about that explicitly during this press conference. He said two things that I want to note. The first is he said the monetary policy is not determined by political pressures, and the Fed never makes monetary policy decisions to prove a point. So, yes, there was presidential pressure. The Fed chair over and over and over again over these last many months has said we're immune from that. There's also been a lot of market pressure that's been placed on the Fed as well. Something we're hearing from Jay Powell today, something we've heard again over these last few months is the Fed is an independent institution. He just keeps coming back to that over and over again as you get tweets, as you get statements from the president encouraging the Fed to do something else.
Yeah, he's made that very clear. Anything in Powell's statement or at the press conference today that struck you, whether it's the Fed's attitude going forward, something they're seeing that's changing in the economy? I know we always like to examine Jay Powell's words very carefully to see changes.
Yeah, it is. These are hard tea leaves to read. But as I listened to him today, he talked about trade in a really interesting way, Alison. He said, we haven't seen the kind of global trade tensions that we've seen that have emerged here since President Trump made it to the White House and started implementing a lot of these trade policies. So he acknowledged the fact during the course of his comments today that this is uncharted territory, that they're watching closely what the effects of these prolonged negotiations are with China. That's certainly something new, something novel that the Fed's having to deal with this time around.
For the average person who's watching this today thinking they have no idea how to read the tea leaves either, David, what does this move mean for the average person?
Yeah, I'm going to say two things on this point as well. The first is we have seen borrowing rates go down for those who are trying to get mortgages, for those who are trying to buy cars. Auto lending rates are down. That's something that consumers can take away from this. That's likely to continue. What I think the biggest takeaway here is what we started off talking about. That is the Fed's sense of how the U.S. economy is behaving right now. Again, it is painting a picture of the U.S. economy in a pretty rosy light, a pretty favorable light. And I think that consumers who are interested in what the Fed's thinking about can walk away from this thinking that those who are making monetary policy in this country have a pretty favorable impression of where the U.S. economy is right now.
David Gurr reporting live from the New York Stock Exchange, my favorite place downtown. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Alison.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.